problem solving evaluator training. This video series is going to explore how evaluators will assess student work in all steps of the GIPS booklet. We will focus on team problem solving evaluation, knowing that individual problem solving evaluation occurs essentially the same, except the students do complete a shorter booklet and their points for steps 1, steps 3, and steps 5 are reflected based on those changes that the students actually do the work. So we will have each of the steps in a separate video series, and you can watch those at your leisure. It is recommended that before we begin this official evaluator training, that you have read through the current year's guidelines for evaluation of global issues problem solving. If you have not read through those evaluation guidelines yet, it is recommended to go ahead and pause the training, find those evaluation guidelines, read through those, and then resume the video series. If you have trouble locating those, they are on the MART, fpspimart.org, or you can email myself, April, at fpspi.org, or Kyla, K-Y-L-A, at fpspi.org, and we will make sure you get those materials to read over right now. As we move through the training, we're going to take a look at various items. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is the role of the evaluator. We will discuss feedback and the importance of feedback. And we will spend the bulk of our time working on the evaluation process itself. We're having an issue. The slide's not changing. Thank you for attending this webinar for Global Issues Problem Solving Evaluation. It is recommended before you begin watching the video series and listening to the evaluation training that you have thoroughly read through the guidelines for evaluation of global issues problem solving. These guidelines are available at fpspimart.org. They can also be attained by emailing myself, April, at fpspi.org, or to our competition director, Kyla Macharnik, at kyla@fpspi.org. We're happy to provide those to you so you can read them over. If you have not read those documents already, it is recommended that you pause the video, find those materials to read through before resuming the video series. We're going to go through each of the steps in the booklet and the evaluation trainings. Each of the steps are on separate videos just to aid in viewer ease to locate those, and then also give you the opportunity if you needed to revisit a certain step, you can do that a little more easily than watching the whole training all together. We are going to take a look at various items here on our agenda. We're going to take a look at the role of the evaluator. That is going to be you. That's a very important role. Thank you for providing this authentic assessment to our students. We're going to take a look at the importance of not only the feedback in providing students the scores and how they completed each of the steps, but also those written comments that provide some coaching tips to students and also some specific praise and some specific ways that they can improve their performance. And the majority of the time will be spent on the evaluation process itself, how each step of the booklet is evaluated. So the role of the evaluator is to maintain a positive attitude. That's important in all things we do with kids, but especially when evaluating global issues problem solving. It's very important to be consistent. Consistent not only within your evaluation of each of the steps, but it's also very important from our aspect that we are consistent in providing feedback to students and evaluation to students that across the board follow the same guidelines. That's why we do value those evaluation guidelines to aid in that consistency. We are at times collaborative in our roles as we evaluate. At the international conference, the evaluators meet together to discuss how step 2 is evaluated and assign those scores. If you're evaluating within your affiliate program, oftentimes you might collaborate with other evaluators, you might collaborate with your affiliate director or your evaluation coordinator to ensure that you are discussing not only the process of how you're evaluating, but how maybe specific future scenes are interpreted and some common trends that you're noting from the students. So collaboration is very important. Having an open mind. We do focus on future problems. They must be logical, but they're also solving problems in the future. And many times, even though we can research the topic, we have to be open to possible solutions or possible challenges that maybe we haven't imagined, but that our students have. We also want to keep an open mind if we work on evaluation between divisions. If we're working with senior students in 11th and 12th grade, certainly their background knowledge, their application of the world and the information that they've read in research is going to be different than maybe our junior level students in grades 4, 5, and 6. We also need to keep an open mind to the diversity of the cultures that are in our program. As you probably know, we have students from all over the world, and those different viewpoints and different cultural perspectives that our student brings to the problem-solving process is also very important to consider. The next piece in following the role of the evaluator is keeping those guidelines in mind. Not only do we have the guidelines for evaluation that I mentioned should be read before participating in this webinar, but each of the future scenes comes with its own set of evaluation notes. And these evaluation notes provide insight based on that specific future scene. So there will be specific challenges. There is a rubric that includes key verb phrases and sample underlying problems directly connected to that future scene. So that is an excellent reference for each of the problems. And then lastly, the role of the evaluator is to provide feedback to our students. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that feedback now. So feedback is absolutely critical and vital to student development. In future problem solving, the students are exposed to a very high level situation in that future scene, and the problem solving process really encourages and expands their thinking, and in order to do so, they're going to need help from the adults that guide them. We want to give them insight to the scoring, and we want to help them achieve higher levels of critical and creative thinking to promote problem solving, and that is part of our mission that we're aiming to seek with our students. We want to encourage ways for them to improve. Comments such as your challenge that you wrote for step 1, number 3, had a really strong connection to the future scene, and you explained that cause and effect relationship. That number 3, what you did there, could be replicated in the other challenges where you were needing some improvement. So that gives them that positive example of what they did right, and also gives them a chance to improve that. We want to consider the skill level. Not only do we have students in various grades 4th through 12th and in those various divisions, but we might have students who come to the state bowl or the international conference or a national finals. That's their first time. They might be competing against students who have been at that same level of competition several times. So we want to note their skill level. We want to give them ways to improve without really focusing too much on all of the things that they need to improve on. That leads us to the next one. Our feedback should be manageable. We all know as adults, if we're provided too many areas to improve on, that could be very discouraging. So we want to focus in on the 2 or 3 things that are really noted as areas to improve, and keep that to an amount that the students can digest. We want to make sure that the feedback we give is substantial in nature. We want to make sure that it's comprehensible by the students. We want to use words and language that they will understand. We want to choose words that are appropriate to our students. Just by saying things like "well done," that could apply to anything. So we want to choose words that are very encouraging to them. We want to find that great balance of praise and criticism together. We want our praise to be legitimate. We might say things like, "You did a great job at following the formula for the underlying problem. Next time, try to focus on the charge a little more closely." So you see how we wove together praise that really matched what the kids did well. They followed the format of the underlying problem, and then go ahead and give them a way to improve. Maybe they scored low on that underlying problem because they weren't directly connected to the charge. So in the quality feedback, we want to make sure that we're including the praise, noting the efforts, noting the strengths, providing students with thoughts for clarification. This is a good way, especially step 3, step 6, where we want the students to really elaborate. It might be helpful to include things such as, "I wish you would have told me more about," and include that in there so that they really know what they could have done to strengthen their work. We want the comments to be amplified. We want them to encourage students to expand their ideas. And then our criticism needs to be constructive. And we talked a little bit about that in the previous slide, where we talked about combining that legitimate praise with the ideas for improvement. We're now going to talk about the evaluation process itself. So the first thing in the red box talks about those guidelines for evaluation. Those are really the guiding force for everything we do in our evaluation. These guidelines are voted on and approved by our governing body, so they are something that we follow and value. That's very important for our evaluators to have a good understanding of those. It's also very important for our evaluators to read some of the research on the topic. What the students are going to write in their booklet is going to be connected to a topic. So that topic understanding is very important for the evaluators. We publish every year a publication, Readings, Research, and Resources. That's a good thing to provide as an overview. We also publish on our website topic descriptors and suggested readings with links to articles. Those are also helpful to the evaluator to have a background. I mentioned the evaluation notes. Those are the items that are specifically included for each of the topics and the future scenes, both for the practice problems and for the competitive ones. And then the evaluators get started on evaluating the booklets. Here's just a very brief overview of the different steps in the process and how we are evaluating. So in step 1, we're going to be looking at the challenge ideas that the students generate and how they are connected to the future scene. In step 2, we are evaluating the student's ability to write an underlying problem and state the goals that will address an aspect of the future scene. The third step, we have the solutions that the students have created, and we are evaluating the variety of solutions that the students come up with connected back to that underlying problem. Steps 4 and 5 are evaluated together. That's where we evaluate the criteria that the students generate and how they've utilized their criteria to determine which solution ideas they're going to apply in their action plan. In the action plan evaluation for step 6, we evaluate the student's ability to explain and elaborate on their best solution. And then the final aspect of evaluation is the overall aspect of how the students utilize the research, utilize creativity, and futuristic thinking throughout all 6 steps. So we take a holistic view of all of those steps together and provide the scores for that. When we are first starting as an evaluator, our timing is a little lengthier than once we get some practice under our belts. So I would say plan for an hour and 15 minutes probably as you're in the beginning stages of mastering the evaluation process, and that's how long it will take you to evaluate a booklet. Of course, there's a lot of variables there. Sometimes we have students who write more lengthy in their explanations in their booklet, so those will obviously take a little longer to evaluate. And then a general rule of thumb is 45 minutes to an hour to evaluate all 6 steps of the process. We're going to now take a very close look at how step 1 is evaluated. And step 1 is the piece where we evaluate the student's ability to identify challenges within the future scene. We look at the fluency. How many challenges were the students able to generate? In a team, they are asked to generate 16. An individual is asked to generate 8. We look at the flexibility of the students' thinking. How many categories did they utilize? We look at the clarity in which they generated those challenges. We look for originality, and we provide feedback. So what kinds of point values are assigned? We look at the quantity of yes challenges, and we award up to 10 points, and that follows a scale. So as you may know, that the teams write up to 16 challenges, you'll see that we only award 10 points here. So there is a scale that's calculated on the score sheet. For example, 15 to 16 challenges are awarded 10 points. 13 to 14 challenges are awarded 9 points, and so on following that scale. Flexibility is also counted up to 10 points. If the students used 11 or 12 categories, that's wonderful. They will still earn the full 10 points, but not to exceed 10 points for categories. Clarity, we do evaluate the student's explanation of their challenges. Can we understand what they are saying? And we do award up to 10 points for the quality of their written communication. The originality points, these are insightful, aha, one-of-a-kind challenges. They're awarded 3 bonus points. I will say it's very common to read 5 or 6 booklets and not see any originalities that are occurring. We will assess students' creativity and overall, so please know that the originality is really the wow factor, a challenge that maybe you wouldn't expect from students in this level. They are awarded sparingly because they really are that wow factor for the students. I'm going to go ahead and stop here to see if there anyone who's listening in right now has any questions that I can.
We get it so far.
Okay, wonderful. We will continue on then. So when we are evaluating the fluency aspect to determine if a challenge is awarded a yes, we are looking to see that the students identified a challenge that might arise from the future scene. So they have noted something in the future scene and they are connecting it with a problem or a concern that is in need of attention. Not only does it tell what the concern is, I think I went too far here on my slide. Sorry about that. Oh no. Sorry about that. We're getting a nice review right now. Okay. There we go. We're back up to speed. The students are asked to tell not only what the challenge is, but they have to make that connection by explaining why it is a concern. The what and the why really demonstrates that cause and effect thinking. It should relate to the future scene. It should be an extension of the content that's in there. Sometimes it may not be stated exactly in the future scene, but it does relate in some way. That brings the next check mark into place, the logical. I like to say that if there is a logical connection to events in the future scene or facts in the future scene that the students have extracted from that future scene, and it is within the realm of probability of happening, we would score this as a Y. Remember, in the role of the evaluator, we talked about keeping an open mind. That certainly does come into play when determining if a challenge is indeed a yes challenge. If we have deemed it as a yes, that it is indeed meet all these things, it's connected to the future scene, it's a cause and effect, logical, within the realm of probability, we assign it a Y. If we've assigned it a Y, we can then assign a category to that challenge. And perhaps it's the category of business and commerce, or perhaps it's the category of technology. We can only make that determination and award category points if it is indeed a yes challenge. Any questions on yes challenges?
You actually just answered the question that I did have. We want to make sure that when we are double checking our work, that we can't possibly have any more fluency points than yes challenges, because you only get fluency points for ones that have been awarded a yes.
Yes, that is scored in flexibility. That's what we're going to talk about next.
Oh, I'm sorry, flexibility.
No, that's okay. You're leading into the next slide. So thank you, Jill, for that. Yes, you would not have more flexibility points than you would have fluency points, because flexibility, which is the category usage, does occur only if it is a yes challenge.
Should we assign a category when we're grading on the worksheet? Should we assign a category to all of the challenges that we are reading, or only the ones that we have scored a yes?
Only the ones that you have scored a yes to. If you feel like the students are really early in their learning process and maybe they have very few yes challenges, what you could do is in the comment section, if you do not assign it a yes, I would just say, work on making this a yes challenge. I see that you've connected it to technology. Or you could even in the comments of overall say, we noticed that you used a lot of categories in your attempt at challenges. As you work on making sure your challenges are indeed yes challenges, you really are already showing strong flexibility in your thinking. I wouldn't assign it a category unless it is a yes challenge. That could be confusing to the students.
How should evaluators go about identifying where in the booklet they're referring to when they're choosing and identifying what a challenge is and what it isn't?
Where in the book? You mean where in the booklet or where in the future scene?
In the booklet, when the students submit and the evaluator is deciding whether or not it's a yes challenge, how is the student supposed to know if there's not a yes challenge given what the evaluator is referring to exactly?
Okay.
Because there could be multiple instances of a certain topic. How do they know what applies to which part of their response?
So are you asking about how you score a challenge that's not a yes challenge?
To a degree, everything, really. I mean, if someone chooses a yes challenge in business and they have multiple yes challenges in business throughout the response, just different topics, they would only get credit for one of them in terms of the uniqueness.
Right.
But they could have two in a row that are back to back, where one is in the middle, one is at the beginning of the list.
Okay,
but
so
if
we
they have multiple of one, how does the student and the coach know which one is being referred to at each time, other than the feedback column? Is there a place in how you guys want that worded in the feedback?
So we do encourage evaluators to look for a secondary category. So let's just say you did encounter challenge number 2 was a yes challenge, and it was a business commerce one. Challenge number 3 was a yes challenge. And before you would assign it business commerce, you might say, oh, this one's really business commerce, but that one I just read, number 2, while it's stronger in business commerce, it really uses technology in business commerce. So I'm going to go back to number 2, and I'm going to assign that one a technology category, and then this one I'm looking at would be a business commerce. They only get credit for one. It doesn't matter which one. So let's say that you didn't have a way. It was clearly business commerce and only business commerce, and you had 3 challenges out of the 16 that were business commerce. You would just get 1 credit for all of those business commerce. And we've actually never had anyone ask which one they got the point for. They would just get the point for business commerce. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was trying to think of, as people are getting feedback, if it's not considered a challenge too, is there a way for evaluators to identify where exactly, what they're referencing when they say, you know, here's where you didn't get credit, or here's where you are getting credit for this, and here's why?
Yes.
Versus just a list where there's no, I guess, like anchor points to say this is where I'm pulling this yes challenge or not quite a yes challenge from.
Okay. Yep. That's exactly what we're about to go into. So challenges can be scored a yes challenge. They can be assigned a category. And we're now going to talk about how you provide feedback to students on those challenges that aren't quite a yes challenge. Okay. So the next category for evaluating challenges are those challenges that have potential, but they don't have sufficient information. Maybe they've been worded poorly. Maybe if they had been stated more clearly, they would have been a yes, but because of the word choice the students used, or maybe they're not well connected to the future scene, we would score that as a P for perhaps. We would not assign a category because only yes challenges can have a category assigned. But in the comment section, and I think, Chris, this is what you were asking, we might suggest to the students how they could turn that perhaps challenge into a yes challenge. We could encourage them to provide clarity. We could also encourage them to make a stronger connection to the future scene. Okay, did that help?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one feedback that can be provided to a challenge that's not a yes challenge. The next type of challenge is a why challenge. And these are challenges that really lack connection to the future scene, and the evaluator is having to make some inferences to what exactly the students are trying to say. You can't see any relationship to the future scene. It makes some assumptions, it makes some really big leaps in connections, and there really might be some conclusions that are in error. This statement would not identify a challenge, so it would be scored as a W. And again, because it's not a yes challenge, it would not be assigned a category. So you might include comments by telling the students how could the challenge have been written to make that, and how to draw a more logical conclusion. Okay. Any questions on perhaps or why? We have a few more categories, but I do want to pause there to see if there's any clarification.
That the why, basically that question, that W stands for why is this connected? Well,
it stands for why is it connected, or maybe the challenge itself isn't identified. Maybe the students just say, for example, if we're looking at the topic of de-extinction, right, from the international conference, the students might just say, animals are being extinct. Okay, well, why is that a problem? So you would say, animals are becoming extinct, causing gaps in the food chain. Okay, now that's taken a piece of information from the future scene and we've connected it to making it a challenge.
Okay, that makes more sense.
All right, the next kinds of challenges that students might make are those challenges that are written as solutions, and sometimes they get so excited about solving the problem that they try to solve it here in step 1. So what happens is the students identify issues that are really solving something rather than saying what the problem is. So if we think about back to that example I just mentioned with animals are becoming extinct and causing gaps in the food chain, they might write, because animals are becoming extinct, we're going to create a regeneration process in zoos. They've actually solved the challenge rather than stating it as a challenge. They would be marked with an S in that. Again, no category would be assigned. And the evaluators are asked to give them tips on how to avoid this and remind them to save these great solutions for step 3. Okay. And then challenges can also be evaluated as a duplicate challenge. So if you have evaluated a challenge and determined that it is indeed a Y or a yes challenge, and then you read one, the next page, or several challenges down, that's very, very similar to another challenge, you would not assign this another Y challenge. You would let the students know that this duplicated a similar idea. You might write in the comment section there that this challenge is very similar to challenge number 7, just so that they know which one you noticed it as a duplicate one, so you can indicate that to them. Okay, any questions on determining if a challenge is indeed a yes challenge?
No, I think we're there, but what I do have a question on the duplicate.
Yes.
So say they have 2 very similar ideas.
Yes.
You can't, but you can't put like one in business and then the other one in technology.
Right.
So you can't do that. You have to determine if it's a yes challenge first before you go on to,
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So determining whether a challenge is a yes challenge or not, that's the first step. And then after you've determined that it's a yes challenge, then you can move on, which is the next slide, to determine if it is indeed worthy of flexibility points, okay? So only those challenges that are yes can be awarded flexibility. We do encourage the evaluators to assign applicable categories that has not been awarded yet. And I alluded to that a little bit on an earlier slide when we were discussing that you want to make sure that we are looking to give the students as much credit for their flexible thinking as possible. Okay. We now move on to evaluating clarity. And this is only applicable to those challenges that have been awarded a yes challenge. So if the students had several duplicate challenges, or maybe they had a few perhaps or why challenges, you are not evaluating those on clarity. So clarity is evaluated on the actual written content that the students generate. They're easily understood. Challenges do not have to be complex or in-depth. They have to be easily understood. That's not to be confused with writing basic challenges, because sometimes very easily understood challenges may be perceived as basic, but that's not what we're evaluating here. We're evaluating the student's identification of possible challenges, and if we can understand them, it is awarded clarity points. We should really understand why they are challenges. We should know and be able to understand and comprehend why the students felt this was a challenge. It should have a clear and thorough description of the concerns. That should be included in their written description. And the challenge should be clearly written. It should be effective. And it should include words like may or might. Because the students are responding to a future scene that's written in the future, we don't know for sure that this is going to be a challenge. So we would say this may be a challenge, or you might include things like we might have a problem if this continues. And that sort of language in the construction of the challenge helps us see that the students realize that these are just possibilities. The rubric here is extracted from the score sheet, just so you can kind of see the different areas. So the highest awards points is up to 10 points for clarity. They're well written, they're clear, and they have that logical cause and effect relationship. If we look at the 7-8, there's clear explanations, there could be some detail. Most of the relationships make sense. So we're really looking at that connection back to the future scene and that cause and effect. For 4, 5, or 6 points, we're going to determine here where it lies, that most of them convey a basic idea. Maybe we're missing some details. Maybe the reasoning is very vague, or maybe there's some real leaps that the students have made that aren't very logical. So we would assign there the 4, 5, or 6, and wherever they lie on the rubric. And then for 1, 2, or 3 points, most of the challenges would be very hard to determine. The cause and effect may be absent or incorrect. And again, if we are scoring lower in clarity, I would encourage evaluators to, in the overall comments for step 1, give the team some tips on how they could improve their clarity. Maybe if they had one challenge that was written exceptionally well, make note of that and just say, you know, challenge number 8 was very clearly written. I understood all of these things. Use that one as an example for how to craft your other challenges. Okay. Any questions on clarity?
Yes. Is it likely that you're going to get yes challenges that are so unclear as to get a 1, 2, or a 3?
It does happen, especially with students who are just learning the process, where you can really see that it is a challenge, but the evaluator is kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt there. The reasoning and the cause-effect piece it's usually for those yes challenges that are barely a yes challenge that are scoring really low in clarity.
Okay.
Did you want to add to that? Kyla's going to jump in and add some thoughts to that. As the competition director who focuses on evaluation all the time, she wants to offer some insight there.
One thing to keep in mind with evaluating the challenges when it comes to clarity is 10 points available for the whole of the yes challenges. So especially in a team situation, You might have one student that's been participating for years and one that it's their first year. So there were 3 challenges accepted as a yes, but were much more of a basic level challenge and didn't really exemplify clarity, while there were others that were much more effectively communicated. And that's where this scale comes into play. Looking at the whole of the yes challenges, you might have some that are on the weaker end, some are on the higher end, but how did they perform as a team overall for the step? So you had asked about those weaker ones, would they even be accepted as yeses? You might have some weak ones on a yes in a booklet, and you might have some very strong ones in the same booklet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now moving into originality. We introduced this a little while back, but these are those challenges that show that unique creativity or really exceptional insight. Sometimes students have researched the topic and found a few really key articles that just happen to match the future scene, and they might have a really insightful view that causes this to be an original award. They are found infrequently among responses at that certain age and grade level. Breakthrough thinking has happened, something maybe you haven't seen before. We mentioned collaboration as being very important in the evaluating process. If you come across a challenge that you feel like is an original, ask another evaluator if it's something they've seen or heard from other students in that same level. Review the challenges in the evaluation notes. These are the notes that are specific to each of the topics. And if it is a challenge that's in those evaluation notes, it wouldn't be one that you would award an originality to because it's one that's been noted as already a possible challenge. They're reserved for special gems. Earlier I mentioned the wow factor, so they are rare. And you would note that in the original column, and that would earn the students 3 bonus points. Okay, this brings us to our review of step 1, and we'll stop at each aspect and ask for any clarifying questions before we move on. So fluency. Fluency is the awards that are based on the number of yes challenges. They are up to 10 points, even though the students write up to 16 challenges. There is a scale that's on the score sheet that you will award up to 10 points. Are there any questions on evaluating fluency?
Yeah.
Okay. Flexibility. This is where we're looking at the unique categories that are used. They are demonstrated only in yes challenges, and these are earned up to 10 points here. Okay, we clear? Okay. Clarity. These are the points that are awarded for effective communication. So these are the challenges that are clearly stated. They have that logical connection, and these are up to 10 points. And as Kyla had mentioned and expanded on that, clarity varies within the booklet because within a team of 4, either each person writes a few challenges or pairs of 2 write challenges. It's not that the whole team is writing a challenge, so you will likely see diversity in the clarity within the booklet itself.
Okay.
Originality, these are those bonus points that are awarded to the students. And then feedback, you want to consider feedback for specific challenges, maybe if there's a few words to note about the challenge, but then also you will also want to provide overall step 1 feedback to the students for how they did holistically on that entire step. So there's 2 places for feedback within the evaluation for step 1.
I do have one question on feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Are evaluators expected to leave feedback on every one of the challenges?
They are not expected to do so. I will tell you a lot of evaluators are very passionate about doing that, especially with the practice problems for the students. As the students progress through the competition season, that wouldn't be appropriate or timely to do for students in a competition. You won't have the time to do that. But as evaluators do have time in those practice problems, that really is appreciated. It is not expected or required.
And one other issue to consider on that front is that, especially when it's a yes challenge, there we go. Especially when it's a yes challenge, quite often the feedback wouldn't be substantive, it would simply be well done. And so there's not necessarily a need to offer that. Focus the line item comments on those challenges that were a perhaps or a why. But if you see the same situation occurring challenge after challenge after challenge, you might just say see below, and then in the overall say you had a number of perhaps, they all had exhibited this same concern, and approach it that way. So it's not that each challenge must have a comment to provide it, but so that they get an overall benefit and aren't left looking at their score sheet wondering why they were provided the scores that they were. Obviously, if all 16 challenges are accepted, they have 10 different categories, their clarity was phenomenal, you know, the book that every evaluator dreams for. Your feedback's going to be outstanding job. You demonstrated an excellent, you know, use of the problem-solving process. Congratulations. Because what do you say if they've exhibited that level of, you know, skill? So it's obviously going to vary. It's not that you must have so many words per challenge or something of that nature.
That's certainly a good question to ask. We want to provide that nice balance to our students, but we want everything to be authentic for them and meaningful to the evaluators, and honor the evaluators' time. Too many of our evaluators are volunteers or provided a small stipend. So we want them to be able to have that decision on what's appropriate for different levels of booklets.
Thank you.
Okay, well, you are welcome. And this concludes the step 1 evaluating of challenges. Thank you.